This slideshow is about the Koprolov family, a Russian family. The stories and the photos are from a book called The Material World, which highlights how families live around the world, shows how they live, their possessions. And in this picture, you can see that it is about Johanna, the mother, who's in the pink blouse, sort of in the center, and her two daughters, Xenia, 15, and the little one, Anastasia, is 8. And with them in this picture is the maternal grandmother who is visiting them. I wanted to start with just a little bit about the town where this family lives. Sustal, Russia, is a town northeast of Moscow on the Kamenka River. It was one of the main Orthodox Church religious centers in Russia and one of the most ancient towns, dating back to 1024. People at that time were doing crafts and cultivating the land. The settlement had trade relations with northern countries like Germany and with Central Asia. After a decline in political importance, the town rose in prominence as a religious center with numerous monasteries. At one time, there were 40 churches to 400 families. Although having a little over 10,000 residents now, Sustal still retains the look and the feel of a small village that, like you can see in the photos, with streams and meadows and chickens and livestock, a common sight on the streets, some of which are unpaved. Here you see all the material possessions of this family, and you see the father of the family at the bottom left-hand corner with the mother and the daughters, and yet the size of the household is listed at 3. The reason for this is that the authors visited twice to take photos and interview the family members, and in between the first and the second time, the father was murdered, and the family still has no information about it. So the rest of the photos and the stories are about the mother and the daughters. If you look at what they have, the size of their household is pretty good, 1,500 square feet. Mother works 42 hours a week. But look at their possessions. I think about, if I put everything in my house out in the front yard, I don't know if it would hold it. And yet, there's a handful of items. A couple of radios, a stereo, a couple of TVs, and an automobile, which no longer works. The most valued possessions, I think, are interesting. The mother says the domra is hers, and it's a musical instrument, which you will see a little bit more later. The oldest daughter says video games and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novels, who wrote about Sherlock Holmes. The younger daughter, stuffed animals, a Barbie doll. You see their per capita income in US dollars, $3,469. Now, granted, this is from 1995, 15 years ago. But think about, what your parents made 15 years ago, and this isn't even close. The percentage of the money that they spend on food, 60%. Imagine if you spent that much money on food, which means they have 30% left for clothing, household goods, etc. What they'd like to have, of course, is to repair the car. But imagine if it cost $2,500 to $3,000 and all you made a year was $3,400 a year. That just isn't going to happen. So this gives you an idea, even though bleak, about how ordinary Russian families live. Here is a picture of the family having a meal. The mama says meals without Yevgeny are lonelier, as you can imagine. 3 people at the table, full of bread, canned meat and potato salad, pickled tomatoes, cabbage, carrots, and cucumbers. The bench and the upper shelves in the kitchen were carved by the father. He was a skilled carpenter and had a dozen projects going on around the house all the time. This could be a kitchen in an American home. It's It's narrow, but there's place to eat, stove. I don't see a refrigerator, but dishes. Some of us look similar, although there's something about it that looks a little bit unique. I love the lace curtains, for example. And of course the cat. This shows the mother and the youngest daughter doing their exercises to begin the day. It's 7:05, and Joanna and Anastasia are watching the television to do the exercises. Soon after, they head off in different directions. The daughter goes to public school, and the mother goes to her teaching jobs. A few days later, Anastasia comes down with a cough and a mild fever. So to comfort her, Johanna stays home as late as she can, but eventually she has to race off to her job. I'm not sure if there's anyone who stays with the 8-year-old when she's not feeling well. There was nothing said about this in the book. But otherwise, the routine of exercise, breakfast, and school goes on, and it's only illnesses and vacation days, which are few, that interrupt it. One of Joanna's jobs is teaching German at a boarding school for troubled children, and this is what you see in this slide. She also teaches music at a music school. At the music school, Johanna teaches a student how to play the domra. It's a mandolin-like traditional Russian stringed instrument that's used to play folk songs. Again, we see her teaching how to play the domra. Music is important to the whole family, according to Johanna, and for her, the domra is her most prized possession. One of Xenia's special interests is chess, a particularly Russian enthusiasm that she shares with a neighbor boy. I never learned to play chess. I certainly didn't play as a teenager, nor did any of my friends. So this certainly fits with the cultural heritage of Russia and may be characteristic of Russian families. Here we see Xenia working on a computer at the local community center. Along with reading, her weekly computer class is her favorite activity. Even though she doesn't own the computer, Xenia considers it her most prized possession. Here we see the great differences between ordinary American families and Russian families. If you recall from your reading, even the very poor in America have more access to computers than ordinary Russian families. Here the family visit the local Orthodox church to light a candle for Yevgeny's soul. Yevgeny remains in the hearts of Joanna and her daughters, and this is a way that they pay tribute to him. The Orthodox Church, as you recall, has a long history in Russia, and particularly in the town where this family lives. After lighting the candles, the family steel themselves for the cold, painful, necessary visit to Yevgeny's grave. This photo is not only bleak to me because of the cemetery, but also the cold and dreary climate that you see. It just feels bleak. The family makes frequent trips to the church cemetery and place food on his grave. Now facing the cold mound strewn with plastic flowers, the family huddles together against a life that has become even harder. reminders of her husband's death include repairs to the house that they were going to complete together. Here Johanna is fixing her hair beneath a ceiling patched with magazine pages. I really don't have time for leisure, Johanna says. Her days are crammed with a full teaching load, the needs of her children, and a mountain of housework, all of which threaten to overwhelm her at times. Her girls help as much as they can, but ultimately it's Johanna who's responsible for making a life for her family. By the end of the day, she says, I am so exhausted. And you can certainly see this in the photo. She goes on, we're not starving. We have enough money for this kind of life. We spend exactly the amount of money I earn. I have money only for food. Sometimes I manage to save some money for the kids to buy some shoes or clothing. But if I want, say, a video camera or a new car to be able to take the kids to a picnic somewhere outside the city, I know that I do not have the money and that I will never have it. This is so sad to me for the family and a woman who is working so hard to know that things aren't ever going to be better. But this is what you read in your text about Russian life today. I copied this page of field notes from the author who interviewed the family and took the photos so that you could kind of get a sense of what she thought of the family and what they were feeling. And I think this adds to the picture that we're getting. Everywhere Joanna turns, she says she meets emptiness. The ache of Yevgeny's loss just gets deeper. She's trying to be strong for the children, and the children are trying to be strong for her. But her daily routine takes up most of her energy. The interviewer says, when I left the house one evening, it was almost 10 p.m. and she and the girls were still making cookies. The next picture actually is a picture of Johanna's quilting club. And I think this is really reminiscent of what you've read. It's difficult to get these women to speak generally about the condition of women in Russia today. Perhaps it's the old fear of speaking out, or perhaps it's the depressing nature of the topic. But some of the women at the club did tell me that conditions in Russia are so difficult that they had to join together to give their souls a rest. One woman said, now the country is on the edge, and it is only the women of Russia that keep it from falling into the pit. The interviewer says, as I watch Johanna and the other women in their daily life, these sentiments certainly ring true. It is in the realm of family that these women seem to have remained strongest. Their roles as caretakers are of great importance to them. And as one woman put it, the adage goes, a Russian woman is so resourceful, she can make candy out of SHIT. Russian women are strong, hard-working, nurturing, long-suffering, and the true heroes of Russia. 90% are in the workforce where they occupy mostly secondary positions. And although Russian culture is very male chauvinistic in flavor, usually the women of society are the responsible ones. Men often hang around together smoking and drinking vodka late into the night, perpetuating the irresponsibility. And in fact, one of the comments from your text was the prevalence of alcoholism in Western families. So women are forced to take hold of the responsibilities, but they're not given the authority in families or in society. And in fact, after the fall of communism, this has gotten worse. Here we see Joanna in part of her precious free time with a close-knit quilting circle, which she joined to help fill the void left by her husband's death. On a crisp winter day, Anastasia on the right and three of her friends rest at the side of her house after several hours of playing in the snow. The traditionally styled trim around the windows was made by Anastasia's father before his death. Here Anastasia has just assembled a snow woman with her sister Xenia and a neighborhood friend. A snow woman perhaps in honor of the strength of Russian women, but also the joys of childhood and a day spent playing in the snow. This Russian family story is from the book that you see on the right, Material World, as I said earlier. I think their story provides us a lesson in economics and geography, but it also reminds us about the world's inequities and also about humanity's common threads: love of family, heartbreak, the necessity of work, struggle, and resiliency. I hope that it helps make what you've read about Russia more real.